We've got potential of having a centralized, dirty energy future, or a decentralized clean energy future. Where is the optimal place for decentralized clean energy? Is where the sun is the brightest, the grid is the dirtiest, so you're avoiding the most amount of emissions, and that's really Africa. If I were to tell you, would you prefer that I shot you in the foot and then put a bandage on it in 20 years' time, or I just stop shooting you in the foot? I'm guessing you'd prefer the latter option. The way it's currently working is that we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're continuing to put 75% of emissions of pollution from energy, and then we're growing trees. We're putting on that bandage. A tree takes 20 years to grow instead of just switching over to clean energy itself. We're going to have to double our energy production in the next 15 years because of AI, because of urbanization, because of population growth. So let's just solve the core issue. And the beautiful thing is people can make money in the process. There's so much energy that's falling on the planet every minute. There's so unbelievably much that is, and we're just wasting it. We're going to have to double our energy production in the next 15 years. So all of those new projects just simply have to be clean energy. There's no way around it. It can't be a drill, baby, drill. You've got to be pragmatic and realistic. You know, there is an economy behind it. There are livelihoods, but we've got to stop subsidizing. It just blows my mind. On the one hand, we're saying we realize like this is the greatest problem, and we're subsidizing that the greatest problem continues. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Marco, thank you so much for joining us here on AERZENtalks. It's amazing to have you. I know you're catching a flight today, so I really appreciate you fitting us in. I'm going to start off with a very simple question. How did you end up here?
So I'm from South Africa originally, and South Africa is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. There's obviously a lot of natural beauty. So growing up in an environment where you have that touch point with nature constantly, you do look at nature quite differently. I think one of the fundamental, this is a side point, one of the issues that we have in the world is many people don't have that relationship anymore with nature. The urbanization, people are always going more and more into cities. And if you're not with something, then you can't appreciate it as much. You don't know how magnificent it is. So I've had the fortune of traveling considerably. I've been to 120 odd countries around the world. And I think holistically, if you look at this planet, and I sometimes ask people, imagine that you are the creator of this reality and take out the human condition, because that opens up a whole can of worms of free will, not free will. How would you make this planet, the concept of life, or the universe better? And people are really quite stumped by that question. They'll sometimes say, well, I'd like that we could fly. And then that's, again, like, do you really want that you're in your garden and all of a sudden there's people flying all over you up ahead? So I don't necessarily agree that we should want to fly. So the planet is so super on point holistically. You've got different regions where you just look at it from a point of view of you're in the desert, or you just look at it a point of view that you're in the Antarctic. In isolation, you'd think this is not necessarily ideal, but holistically, it's a thing of absolute magnificence. And I really do think that we're at this crossroad where we have to make a decision. Are we going to acknowledge this awesomeness, whether it's by chance, whether it's created, or are we going to just ignore it, and potentially that story, that 13.6 billion year story, comes to a not particularly nice ending? We're really at this crossroads. So the reason why I do what I do is I think if you acknowledge that, you have to make a decision. And my decision was to get involved. And for that, the clear thing that you have to do is get involved in the energy space. It is the driver of 75.7% of emissions. It causes 8 million deaths per annum because of fossil fuel-based pollution. So essentially, that's why, in a nutshell, we do what we do.
But can you remember, was any turning point or when it kind of clicked for you that you felt passionate about it? Like, was there a situation or incident that you went, oh, wait a minute, I'm involved in this, or I want to get involved in this?
So it has been something that's always lingered in me over time. But ironically, actually, when I lived in Dubai 8 years ago, the movie came out Before the Flood by Leonardo, the documentary. And I just really remember watching that in the marina, and just actually being like quite saddened by the concept of the potential negative effects of climate change, of pollution. You can also simplify things literally, because there's obviously a lot always about carbon in the atmosphere. Just call it pollution. It's not a very clever thing to pollute the air you breathe, which is something you're constantly doing. So that was a point, really a turning point, watching that documentary, just thinking, I also have to get involved. I can't just ignore that. And then after Dubai, then I started.
That was it.
Yeah.
I think you just mentioned it, but what experience that made climate and energy transition a personal mission for you? So I know that movie changed it, but when did it become, so after that movie, when did you go, right? What was the next step?
So after working in Dubai, I invested into a company in Switzerland, and then I decided from an ethical point of view that we should pay 500 francs extra for the year to get hydropower instead of fossil fuel-based energy.
Okay.
So I just thought it's the right thing to do. And then that actually led me down the path of thinking, why is there no platform that showcases businesses running on clean energy? And that was the starting point. And obviously you have to create a business around that. Yeah. Just that in itself isn't sufficient. And then over time, then we became the platform that actually helps optimize these clean energy projects with a focus on local projects, because local energy means you don't lose 11% on transmission. You can deploy it 14 times faster and all eyes on the clock. Yeah. And you can also be on during grid outages. So that then became our niche, that we really take a local clean energy project that might not get the green light for funding, and we make it bankable.
Amazing. But how did you said that you had the option to pay, was it an option to pay the 500 francs extra?
Yes.
So they came to you and said, if you want, you pay 500 francs, then this becomes
then it becomes clean energy.
Clean energy.
Yes.
And that was presented to you, and you said, that's a brilliant idea.
I don't really think it was presented. It was more a query. Like you got at the beginning of the year, you got like, these are your choices of the kind of electricity that you have. Yeah. And then decided.
And then you said, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. Amazing. You've worked in finance, tech, banking, research, and now entrepreneurship. And you've seen the impacts and inefficiency up close. So you know you're well-rounded and well-versed. How did this combination of disciplines shape the way you approach sustainability today? And what keeps you personally motivated when progress feels slow or the systems are reluctant and difficult to change?
So I think also my background as an economist, like studying economics in one viewpoint is relatively useless to study, because there's very rare like direct economics jobs, and then they've always got a bad reputation for predicting the future and not actually ever getting it right. But it does teach you how to think holistically. It's similar in a way like engineers. They think holistically, just that engineers actually also have far more of a practical usage. Yeah. So first you got that holistic thinking there, and then also because of my different lines of work, I do tend to look at things quite holistically. I don't just think of that particular point, thinking how does that affect the other point? So it has developed like a systems kind of thinking. And in terms of the motivation to always carry on, one of my favorite quotes, I'll just give the final part of that, is from Calvin Coolidge: persistence is omnipotent. The two main things as an entrepreneur, and even in general to be successful in life, I think, are discipline and persistence. If you've got those two attributes, then normally, eventually, you should be able to succeed. Yeah. So that's just a mantra that I always have. You just keep on going. You have to have almost a goldfish memory. Like, forget, oh, geez, this has been a 5-year slog. Yeah. And if I'd had known in the beginning, but you just go step by step. You sometimes have to have faith in the ability. I think the main thing from an entrepreneurial point of view, the main thing that you need to have is the ability to solve problems. Yeah. Because you're going to get so many problems, and you're not going to know what the problems will be until they come to you. So if you have that mindset of, give me a problem, I'll fix it, then just start the journey, and then you'll see along the way what comes, and maybe it'll be a 5-year journey, a 10-year journey. You just got to keep on pushing through.
Did you always have an entrepreneurship kind of growing up, or did you develop it later on, or you feel? So,
fun fact, the exact number I'm not sure, but I think I recall seeing that there were 5 South African entrepreneurs of unicorns, right? And there were only 2 Swiss entrepreneurs of unicorns, and like that just gives a bit of like an example of like South Africans were super entrepreneurial. Yeah, obviously the most famous South African is Elon Musk. Yeah, Peter Thiel also went to the University of Pretoria. So when you you grow up in an environment where things, sometimes electricity goes off. You really have to always find solutions. So I think there's just an automatic. There's many things in life. You're asking what was the moment. Things are often a gradual learning curve, which is the kind of environment you grow up in. And in South Africa, you grow up in having to solve problems. You can't always rely on the government to fix things. You can't rely on the police necessarily. You have to often find solutions yourself.
Yeah. And
hence that just creates a whole bunch of entrepreneurs. So we got an extremely high entrepreneurs per capita ratio.
And would you encourage people, from your experience, to go for it? If they have any inkling to be an entrepreneur, or do you think it's a certain type of person, or do you think you have a good job staying in your job? What would be your advice for, say, the young Marco who's 15 years old in school now?
I would recommend initially being your bedside DJ, a one-man show on the side. Get things right.
Right.
Make sure that if you were to quit your job, that you really have a really good idea for probably also your first angel investor.
Yeah.
So that's I think the first ticket. So we were very fortunate. Our first angel is actually called Angel here at the DIFC.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, if I really think about it, that was potentially the biggest moment of the company, because then all of a sudden that means, okay, you got your first investment, and you're going to need to have investment in the beginning to get the company going.
Yeah.
So I would recommend do things in parallel. Take your time to get everything to the point of, okay, we're already now 80-90% towards actually being a company.
Yeah.
Preferably get your first ticket and then get going.
Do you feel like your experience in the corporate world and banking and investing and all that help you toward?
I actually worked in tech in Singapore.
Okay.
And at that point, I made the decision, there's no way I'm ever going to start my own company. Then after a couple of years, why not? And I realized that moment that it's so important to have access to capital. We had an amazing team, we had an amazing idea, but it was just such a struggle. And then afterwards, I was offered to enter the world of private banking. And then I thought that's a great opportunity to start getting that access to capital. And then, super duper important to have those initial checks come in that you can start getting the operations going.
Amazing. As we said, you travel across all 7 continents, 120 countries. Out of all those countries that you've been to, is there one country that you felt where the idea you said, my idea would blossom in this country more so?
So, as mentioned, the core energy, we have 2 alternative, fundamentally, obviously there's more levels, one level out, underneath, but fundamentally we've got potential of having a centralized dirty energy future, or a decentralized clean energy future, because of the reasons mentioned. 11%, you avoid 11% loss of transmission, you can deploy faster, and so on. So where is the optimal place for decentralized clean energy? Is where the sun is the brightest, the grid is the dirtiest, so you're avoiding the most amount of emissions, and that's really Africa. So similar to the fact that Africa bypassed the phone, the first landlines, they just went straight to mobile phones, and it absolutely became a booming industry. The MTN story in Nigeria is always one of the most mentioned, success stories of Africa. But Africa's just got so much solar irradiance. About 40% of the world's solar irradiance falls on the African continent. Really? They've only got about 4% of the world's solar. So decentralized local clean energy projects in Africa in general. Our first market has been South Africa. I happen to also come from South Africa, even though it's a Swiss company. That's really the market that we focus on, because it's been so ideal in terms of the solar irradiance, in terms of the grid emissions, in terms of the fact that there's been outages with the electricity. Yeah. And also there's a carbon tax law as well there. That's one of our main forms of revenues, is monetizing those emissions reduction. And then really we help accelerate the deployment of that optimal form of energy with the local clean energy projects, your rooftop solar systems. And there's just been a massive issue with trust in that regard. So one of the reasons, though, even though it's so obvious that clean energy, particularly local clean energy projects, are optimal. Yeah. So just clean energy as a whole, solar is on average 52% cheaper than your fossil fuel-based alternative, the coal plant. Even though It's so much cheaper. It is so much marketable. There's still a $2.3 trillion funding shortfall. And one of the main reasons for that is the trust in the data of these projects.
So is it just people are reluctant to change? Is it a mindset thing, or is it a generational thing, or is it they're happy with what they know?
So, energy is called power, and there is a definite play on words there with power. So there is still $1 trillion of subsidies, indirect and directly, going towards the fossil fuel-based energy. Once you have that power, you don't necessarily want to let it go.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's really, in particular with that optimal local form of energy. So you don't really necessarily know what's going on with your energy production. So many of our clients, solar developers, they've got thousands of small scale projects, but they don't know because there's various different inverters. So they don't have a single unified dashboard normally of knowing what's going on across their portfolio of assets. So there's that problem with the energy data. Then you don't necessarily know what's the quality of the project. Like, you don't want to be cutting down trees in the Amazon to create a solar farm. That's counterintuitive. It's all about going to a clean future. Yeah. So you have the issue with the quality of the projects, and then you don't necessarily know how much impact is being generated. Only 84% of all carbon credits that were generated never actually reduced any carbon. Yeah. So it's massive. One of the core issues, trust, greenwashing, trust. That's the problem. And if you can get that right, if you can have that data and automate the analysis of that data, that's when you can start making these projects highly interesting.
How do you think, though? How the situation is trust. Yeah. How do you get that? How does that translate? What's the steps needed to build that trust?
Data.
So
if you can collect the data, if you can speak to the inverters of these small scale projects, you can take that data, you can put it onto a trust creating technology mechanism, which is blockchain.
Yeah.
Then okay, this is immutable data that's now being tracked. And then you can analyze that data with the help of AI. Then you can now start automatically showing what's the quality of that project. So we have got the Earth standard, EARTH, E for energy efficiency. So we measure, based on the geolocation of that project, how much can this project produce? What's the solar irradiance of that particular project? Then we've got A for atmosphere. How dirty is the grid of that particular region? How many emissions can be reduced? Then you've got R for resources. Are any trees being cut down? Is it a solar system on a roof? So that okay, no resources have been destroyed in order to create a system. T for trade, the business that owns the system. Are they themselves economically sustainable? And H for humanity, is there any socioeconomic upliftment? So we collect the data. There's 5 main criteria, but 17 data collection points. Okay. And then with that, our AI model can then work out how good is this project. Similar to a Michelin star rating, then it gets an Earth score of up to 3. And then okay, this is a high quality project. That itself de-risks the project, makes it more bankable. And in addition, knowing what's going on across all of the different projects, that energy data, you can see, there's a suboptimal project there versus a universe of data that's collected. Yeah. And then finally, monetizing the impact means you're also creating additional revenue. So these projects wouldn't get the green light because they're not providing enough returns. They're too risky. How they become de-risked, they're providing greater returns, and then you can accelerate the deployment of local clean energy.
And then with that information, then an investor can come in and have a clearer picture of the scene, of the landscape of the land, and then he can go on and go, yes, I feel comfortable with that, based on this information that come in.
Yes, and they've got full data transparency as well.
And then this information, and then who was in control of that information? You're in control of the information.
In control?
Yeah.
Well, the information is just, it's there. It's just
no, but if I want to access it, so say I'm an investor.
Yeah.
If I come to you, then will you guide me into certain best locations, or would it come into a case of I'll come to you with an area and then you go into the area and do the information for me? So say, for example, I'm coming in, I'm gone, Parker, I really like, I'll just use an example. I really like just outside Dublin. Can that then be deployed there, or is it I come to you and you tell me where to go?
So we focus on those high impact regions. So like Ireland, Scotland, we wouldn't want to go to places where the sun isn't that bright and the grid is not that dirty. So for example, in Scotland, the grid is super clean. I think it's 0.3 kilograms of CO2 per 1 kilowatt hour of energy production. Not negligible, but in many instances, they actually have subsidized renewable energy projects that will even be a higher grid emissions factor than what's already there. So we'll always be looking at the places where the grid is dirty and where the sun is strong. So we would actually be saying, look, this is where we're doing projects,
so then
as opposed to,
So that's what I'm saying. So then you'll go, no, Casey, Dublin, you're fine.
Yeah.
We think you're better off going to Africa.
Emerging markets.
And then that's where I'll go.
Yeah.
How do you become credible? If I'm an investor, I go to you, how do I know you're legit?
So we are ISO accredited, we get SGS validated, so you do use third parties. We're also on the emissions reduction credit side, you get Vera approved as well. So you do use the third parties, and then in theory, you wouldn't actually need to because you've got full data transparency. So when you've got full data transparency and immutable data that cannot be changed because it's on blockchain, then really you can take the looking glass and you can just see whatever you want or any project that you want. So it's a mix of those, and it is a case of that you have to do those steps, and then you get the big partners, and then you slowly become more and more of an accepted standard.
Get into this world, has it surprised you from the potential from the investment side, how big it is?
Not surprised per se. More just surprised of the fact that. So it's all about energy. Everything is about energy. I love trees. I love mangroves, but really, if 3/4 of the issue in terms of emissions comes from energy. And that's if I were to tell you, would you prefer that I shot you in the foot and then put a bandage on it in 20 years' time, or I just stopped shooting you in the foot? I'm guessing you'd prefer the latter option. Yeah. So the way it's currently working is that we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're continuing to put 75% of emissions of pollution from energy, and then we're growing trees. We're putting on that bandage. A tree takes 20 years to grow, instead of just switching over to clean energy itself. So the economics makes so much sense to switch over to clean energy. The beautiful thing is, again, love trees, but trees don't really provide those clear returns unless you create additional incentive mechanisms such as carbon credits. With energy, you're making money. So people can make money, but again, the issue has been that trust. So if you can bring the trust to these optimal forms of energy, which are providing returns in the region of 20% per annum, then you've got a situation where you can hyperscale the deployment of clean energy. And that's really the crux of the issue. It is what makes us, in a way, humans. It is the lifeblood of the economy. We're going to have to double our energy production in the next 15 years because of AI, because of urbanization, because of population growth. So let's just solve the core issue. Like, call a spade a spade. Let's solve energy. And the beautiful thing is people can make money in the process.
Which is fascinating because I didn't realize it was up to 20%. But that's
in emerging markets. We can quite easily get 20% returns.
You think, I'm just thinking for myself, I never knew that. You think that's also an issue of people don't realize that there's potential there to be like those kind of investments from energy? Like they always think of whatever they want. The Bitcoin or what they're used to. But do you think this is a new potential that they have the access to the information?
So the problem is that most of the developed world is in regions that are colder. So Europe, North America. So these are the places where you're not getting those kind of returns, because the way that you measure the return is how much energy you can produce. So if you've got a solar irradiance, like Namibia has got 9 times the solar irradiance of Scotland, for example. So that means you're producing 9 times more energy, you're obviously going to get far greater returns. But people are often thinking, where's the money normally come from? It comes from the likes of North America, it comes from Europe. So these guys are used to a world where you're not making those kind of returns. You often need subsidies in order to be able to have solar in places where the sun doesn't really shine. So there is that gap in knowledge often in terms of knowing, well, if you put solar where there is high solar radiance, you're going to be getting these kind of returns. But again, as mentioned, the issue has been trust.
I think that's fascinating. If AI is used responsibly, what role do you see it playing in shaping a more equitable and sustainable energy future, particularly for regions like Africa and in the Middle East?
So AI, you know the Latin phrase, quid custodiat custodes, who guards the gods? And we've often got that issue with humans, like eventually who's going to be the one that actually, who guards the gods? So there's, you're always shifting over the problem. And I think where AI can be very useful from a governance point of view in general is that you can have that AI guards the gods and the gods guard AI. So you've got these two, both of these. So then you don't really have that custodes problem because there are two separate creatures who are guarding each other. So also if you're thinking of like politics, how do you create an optimal form of democracy? There might be a way of having that you've got this kind of Senate and then they're looking at what the AI is doing and the AI is looking at what they do. And so that's one thing I think that there can be a big help in decision making from AI on a government's point of view, but then obviously in terms of optimizing the data collection and being able to decode the energy data, decode the project data, be able to see how could you optimize this energy production to an absolute maximum.
It's amazing. I always think like you look at, I was thinking 10 years ago, AI was kind of this myth, not a myth, but like where it is now, it's now in people's hands. They want in 10 years time, how powerful it's going to get, how advanced it's going to get, who has that, as you were saying, who's going to be in control of that. It's going to be fascinating to, and if it will become more integrated, I wonder that would be your go-to. You know what I mean? Like your AI technology, will there be a need for lawyers? Will you have that kind of like doctors?
There's the word you used, fascinating. Like I don't necessarily know whether this is a created or not created reality. I think if you do the maths on the probability that we happen to be at this exact moment in time, if you look at it from how, like, the question I asked you, if you were to make something better, like what would you choose? And that's stumping people. So the fact that we have this awesome existence, this awesome concept of the planet, of life itself, if you do the maths, you do start tending towards there might be some kind of a created element to this life that we live. And from that point of view, anything goes. If this is base reality, on the other hand, if this just happened by chance that we got here, then there is a very high likelihood that we have the answer to the Fermi paradox, where all the aliens, that intelligent life creates other intelligent life and then self-exterminates. We were very lucky that when we created the nuclear bombs, that we didn't end up self-exterminating. We didn't do, the mad mutual destruction, but only for a particular period. We're now looking at 81 years that since the dropping of the bomb in Hiroshima. I was at the 70-year anniversary of Hiroshima, by the way. So that was also, quite vividly thinking of the world that you could have created if Germany was the first to get the bomb, or Japan. So you could have had a completely different kind of scenario. So we're very lucky that we passed that one mutual assured destruction event. AI is potentially also one, but like you said, I think it's fascinating. Even if, you've got to take a stoic, pragmatic point of view. In the event that this is the end game, which, let's be honest, there is a non-negligible probability that it is, in that event, it's just fascinating also to be a part of that. Obviously, we should try what we can to avoid that. But if you can't avoid it, because there are forces at play, there's game theory at play, there's countries that are competing, racing towards super intelligent AI. In that event, if you can't do anything about it, that's where you put your stoic hats on, then we can still be grateful for having experienced this life. So I consider myself, if this were to be base reality, a optimistic pessimist, that there is a high probability that this is going to be not end well, but I'm very grateful for having had the opportunity to experience life, and I find it fascinating to see what's going on, and I'd like to try contribute in creating this the positive future world that we have, knowing that there's only so much that I can do. A lot is outside of one's power. Let's hope for the best.
But I always think that with I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And I think, yes, if AI wants to get rid of us in the future, it probably can. You know what I mean? But I also think if AI can solve all the problems that we can't solve, like I'm fascinated with the whole quantum computing. Like that to me is just, growing up, I used to watch Star Trek. That's where Star Trek is now coming into this,
So you're tricky.
I'm the Trekker, the Trekkie.
Tricky. But also Star Wars as well, or just
Lately. Like lately. They got me on the series. The initial ones, the movies didn't get me.
They got you on the series.
The series got me, Mandalorian and Andor. But I always wonder if these quantum computers are now, if they say are answering questions that took 10,000 years or infinity to answer. I don't know how they work all this out, by the way. I'm kind of like, okay. And I'm like, wow. In that aspect, I'm like, in 10 years' time, what will we know that we didn't know? What will we see? What we can do? The possibilities. In theory, again, it's all theory at the moment. Surely every question we have will have an answer to. If you go by the fact that these computers are now able to answer questions that we couldn't answer before.
But we don't have the data on many things. Like the biggest question of them all, the only data point we have of single-cell life is us. The only data point we have of multi-cell life is us. So, the interesting thing is there's trillions of planets in the universe, but the probability of single-celled to multi-celled animal life is even less likely than the amount of times that you have planets in the universe. So the universe formed 13.6 billion years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was 3.9, the Earth 4.5, 600 million years after that, I think, was single-celled life came about. And then three-ish billion years of just single-celled organisms.
Yeah.
Now, in the oceans, because you can extrapolate the data more easily, you can take like a liter of water, and you can see how many single-celled organisms are in that liter of water, take a few samples around the oceans, and then you can work out ballpark how many single-celled organisms are in the oceans. And there's 2.9280 is the estimate of how many single-celled organisms there are in the ocean. So if you round that up to 3, that's 3 nonillion. It's insanely way, 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 way bigger than trillions.
Yeah.
So there were these 3.1 billion years of just single-celled organisms. So even if you assume from 0 to that 3 nonillion that we have now in the oceans, it's very hard to measure on land because you can't extrapolate the data that easily. Yeah. So if you assume a linear growth rate, then so let's double it for I'm doing some basic estimates here, but let's just double it for what's on the Earth. So, and then assume a linear growth rate. So on average, you then cut it in half because it's linear. You're looking at about 3 nonillion at any point in time, single-celled organisms that are roaming the Earth, not really roam, just existing.
Yeah.
And there was only one multi-celled animal life that formed, that after 3.1 billion years. So imagine a movie where you have these white dots symbolizing the single cell. It's the most boring movie you're ever going to see. It's a 3.1 billion year long movie with just white dots representing these single-celled organisms. And then all of a sudden, after 3.1 billion years, there's this one black multi-celled animal life dot. And that's where we came from. So the probability of multi-celled life having formed based on our data point is extremely, extremely rare. And currently we don't know any data in terms of if there's any other planet out there with single cell, let alone multi-cell. So there's a very high likelihood that all of this magnificent universe, the spectrum, of if you black holes, or I don't know if you've heard of a neutron star before. A neutron star can occur after a supernova, where a teaspoon of a neutron star, because it's so dense, weighs as much as Mount Everest. So it is just an orchestra of magnificence, and this is potentially all for us. And there's two ways that you can flip it. You can either look at it from the point of view of, many people say, oh, the universe is so vast, we're so irrelevant. I look at it the other way around. The universe is so vast, and potentially we're the only conscious creatures out there to experience it.
Yeah.
How phenomenal is the fact that we get to experience this?
Yeah.
So, the nihilist view, or I don't even know what you call the other view, just the this is unbelievable, like, point of view.
Like, from your view, is out of that black dot, 3.5 billion years, we've been around, say, as you and I, this form for 300,000 years.
Yeah.
I find that more fascinating that, say, out of that 300,000 years, civilizations come and go. Take our current civilization, roughly 5,000 years from whatever you think the pyramids were built till now. And now in the last 200 years, since we started the Industrial Revolution and now we've got AI, I find that more fascinating that we've just gone like,
Yeah.
AI. To me, that's kind of like unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, I know some people think it's a bad thing, the whole AI, and that's, and I think it's sensational.
Yeah.
Exciting. I think if you're not excited about it, then that's a shame.
Yeah.
And say, I think you should embrace all that kind of stuff, embrace AI, embrace technology, embrace finding out about it.
You have to. Game theory.
Yeah.
If you don't, then you're gonna be left behind.
Yeah.
That's always, game theory is a fascinating concept. There was an interesting question asked to John von Neumann, who many consider the most intelligent person that ever lived. Hungarian. So he was part of the Martians in the 1940s. This group of Hungarians, they were just, as soon as Einstein left the room, they'd all speak Hungarian. And he was asked, I think it was by a Life magazine, do you think we should attack Russia? And I think he answered something along the lines, it's not a question of whether we should attack Russia today or tomorrow. It's a question of why we haven't already attacked them. Because he was thinking of a game theory, the colloquial way of the model is called the caterpillar. So it's because it's got like multiple like legs, and it's basically whoever strikes first wins.
Right.
So when you start looking at the world through a game theory point of view, you start realizing, I mean, AI, and even like Sam Altman has said this, and many of them accept that there is a high probability this is going to cause our destruction. Yeah. But they know that if they don't do it, someone else is going to do it. So you've got the countries competing with each other. Then inside the countries, you've got the companies competing with each other. Inside the companies, you've got the individuals competing with each other.
Yeah.
And the
genie's out of the bottle.
The genie's out of the bottle.
You know?
The genie's out of
I'm kind of
Pandora's box has been opened.
Do you know what I mean? I always think of the references. You know that they have apparently they were saying the current generation, it's now they're trying to teach you say please and thank you to the robots, just in case, because of that whole mentality. The robots will remember who didn't say please and thank you. Also to do with Trekkie, I also found it fascinating. This is totally off script. They had the head of SETI recently.
Yeah.
And they're talking about like alien life, and they were saying, does it exist? She goes, currently, if you got a pint glass of water from the ocean, that's how much we have searched of space.
Yeah.
Sounds
about right.
She goes, and it's like saying there's no whales in this glass of water, so therefore there's no whales. The ocean. Yeah. I don't know. That's totally irrelevant, by the way. So I'll bring that in. When you look 10 to 15 years in the future, this is fast because you're a very fascinating person to speak to. What's a success look like for you? And not just for Enerlink, but for the energy transition as a whole. So if we sit here in 15 years' time, what do you think?
We have to have a world where there's far more solar systems on roofs. There's also, micronuclear is obviously the two main forms of local energy that we're going to be looking at in the future is micronuclear, solar systems with battery backups. And we just have to have a world where we're taking advantage of all of this. There's so much energy that's falling on the planet every minute. There's so unbelievably much and we're just wasting it. So it's like, you're Irish. I'm guessing you like your Guinness, your beer on occasion. So it's just like having this room with a whole bunch of Guinness, and you're taking a sip of one glass, and all the rest is going to waste.
Negligible.
It's terrible. So I hope that in 10, 15 years, and I hope that we were a big part of that, there are just far, far, far higher percentage of roofs that have solar systems on it. Like if you're thinking from our particular niche point, but in general, we have to create a clean energy future. We're going to have to double our energy production in the next 15 years. So all of those new projects just simply have to be clean energy. There's no way around it. It can't be a drill, baby, drill world. It's absolutely silly from any perspective. 25 to 50% of wars since 1973 have been because of energy. Yeah. Venezuela, again, energy. So energy is at the crux of everything. I don't know if you've heard of the Kardashev scale. Yes. You've heard of it. Yes. So we're about 0.62 on the Kardashev scale as we use more and more of the energy that we're able to use of our particular planet. And the story of humanity, the story of civilization, the story of life itself is an energy story. Yeah. So let's make sure we go down the right path, and success is really that we've done 20,000 projects already, that we've done multiple millions of projects, and that you go around and you're surprised when you see a roof without the solar system on it.
Do you think though, well, that technology needs to get cheaper and more accessible to Mr. and Mrs. Joe Blogs at home, where and it's easy for them to install and get up and running? Or do you think there's a boundary where it's like the returns aren't there yet?
The returns are there. I mean, the returns are definitively there.
Definitely there.
The returns are there.
Yeah, why do you think then so why aren't Mr. and Mrs. Blogs doing it in your eyes at the moment?
Well, capital. It's about that transition cost. So you'll often have situation A and situation B. B will make far more sense than A, but from order to get from A to B, you have to have that capital. It comes down to money.
Right.
And for that money to go to change from a situation A to a situation B, you have to create that trust. You have to optimize this. You have to make it that this is bankable as possible. And then we can have the clean energy world.
Do you think if we could make it cheaper, the solar power panels themselves on the roofs, do you think that would be a big step?
They've already come down so much. They are, like I said, 52% cheaper on average. A solar plant versus a coal plant on average is 52% cheaper. So it's a mix of fundamentally two things. It is the fact that you've got those direct and indirect subsidies towards fossil fuels in the tune of around $1 trillion.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, the fact that there's just a lack of trust in many of the projects. There's more things at play here, but those are two of the fundamental issues.
And it's just a case, do you think, I'd be like saying before, it's just a case of certain people don't want to let that old school go. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of infrastructure that's already in place.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, unfortunately, sometimes there's a lot of unions and there's a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And they don't want to let that go.
And it's about transitioning. You can't stop it from one to the next, but there has to be, and definitively all the new projects have to be clean.
Yeah.
And then otherwise it is a transition. We've got to be pragmatic and realistic. There is an economy behind it. There are livelihoods, but we've got to stop subsidizing.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. On the one hand, we're saying, we realize like this is the greatest problem, and we're subsidizing that the greatest problem continues.
Yeah.
I mean, it's phenomenal.
It always reminds me of some ways. Remember, I think I've seen before, I think at the start of the 20th century, the 19th century, whaling was the biggest industry. Mm. And the biggest fear with stopping whaling, because it produces all the oils, was to like, well, what about all those jobs?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? We can't, like, it's so big, it's so large. I just feel like that's what it's kind of like now. There's so much money and big corporates, and they're not letting go. Like you said, they know the right answer.
Yeah.
But in their eyes, I wonder is a case of, well, that's 50 years time's problem. That's not our problem.
Yeah.
That's where, unfortunately, we're at. Last question. How, in your eyes, what can the average person do now to make a change?
If you really care about your children, care about the story of life, you care about the planet, whatever you care about, I mean, how can you not care about these things? Then make sure that you are supporting clean energy, and the way you do that is the energy that you use, that it's clean.
And people can make money from it.
Yes.
Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much.